You need to think about the fact that state governance, federal governments is going to disintegrate. It's disintegrating now. The state's only function is going to be to police you, not to provide for you, not to protect you. So if you have any sense at all, then you're going to need to start looking at the state as an occupation force that you have to do your best to try to circumvent, to try to navigate your way around. Because their job is going to be literally to disenfranchise you, dispossess you, disempower you, impoverish, and subjugate you. Mark my words. I'm not being hyperbolic. That's what's going to happen. So you need to put it in your mind that your community is like a people living under occupation. I'm completely serious about this. And you're going to have to do all that you can to try to create your own system of order locally, your own system of management, your own system of survival, independent of the state, independent of the system. And yes, that means creating your own culture locally, a healthy culture, so that the localized system that you build will have humane, healthy, and moral priorities, unlike the state. I'm not saying that this is going to happen immediately, even though we can already see that it is underway in America and in the West generally. But you're moving towards a total system collapse. And I'm not talking about some post-apocalyptic scenario. No, this isn't a zombie movie. But if you want to compare what life was like in the year 2000 with what it's like in 2025, and then you compare what 2045 is going to be like compared to today, it's going to be a dramatic and very grim contrast. But you see, they do it in slow motion. They do it incrementally so that it becomes normalized. But that's why I'm saying you need to start now. You need to start building now. Actually participate in your own survival. Listen, the whole underpinnings of Western so-called civilization are flawed and they're toxic. That's why it built the systems that it built. The scarcity model of economics, the extractive, exploitative mentality. That whole mindset is hostile. You need to transcend that. Like even with money, like I said, you can actually create collective mutual support networks within your community, and you can decide for yourselves how you're going to mediate exchange of goods and services yourselves. You don't have to take their model. You don't have to take their approaches as a given. You could establish credit systems internal to your communities. You know, develop some sort of a value-backed type of a currency or a labor-backed currency, digital or paper-based. You know, it's like an alternative currency that's issued locally, redeemable in goods and services from participating members, but pegged to effort or contribution, not to fiat. You know, create a registry where hours of work across all different fields are valued in units and stored in personal ledgers, allowing for trade even if money gets devalued. You know, redemption via purpose. These credits can be redeemed not just for goods, but for educational access, services, and so forth, linking economy to social agency. These kinds of projects exist in New York, in Switzerland, and other places, where you have local currencies that are pegged to service hours and contribution. I mean, imagine if you could actually secure your basic needs through an alternative local currency, you know, credit for work or credit for service, and you could redeem that at participating stores, participating vendors and service providers, instead of using dollars from your job. Well, you could actually start saving money, saving dollars, if you could actually secure your needs through an alternative form of exchange. Like I said, these types of things do exist, and you can learn from those existing initiatives. It's not undoable. But let me tell you something that's going to be difficult for many people to accept. The collapse of the United States, economically, socially, and morally, was not caused by an external enemy. It's not the fault of China. It's not the fault of immigrants. It's not the fault of elections that didn't go your way. It's not even the fault of just corrupt elites. No, the collapse was philosophical. It was spiritual. It was civilizational. The rot began at the root. They built a civilization where the highest value was materialism, where worth was measured in consumption, where success meant accumulation, where GDP growth was more important than human dignity or societal well-being. They mistook endless accumulation for life's purpose, and in so doing, they starved their own souls of meaning. I mean, that would have been enough to lead them astray, but it didn't stop there. They championed individualism to the point of pathology, glorifying personal ambition and disdaining collective responsibility. Their economy wasn't designed to sustain, it was designed to extract. It's a culture focused exclusively on short-termism, the addiction to quarterly profits, election cycles, 24-hour news, the inability to think past next week, let alone the next generation, and everybody has to kiss the ring of the invisible hand of the market. So in the end, this civilization didn't fall because it was attacked. It fell because it forgot what civilization even means, what it's supposed to mean. It forgot what it means to be human. So if there's any path to reconstruction, it has to begin by recentering human life around meaning, not around materialism. Balancing individual initiative against communal obligation. Building economies that are based on reciprocity, not robbery. Institutionalize long-term thinking. Try to constrain the market within the boundaries of morality. I mean, why on earth would you have ever accepted it to be otherwise? And yes, I said reconstruction, not reform, not rescue, not restoration. The system that you built cannot and should not be saved. You don't need to try to save it. You need to try to save yourselves from it. You need to jumpstart yourselves out of the habit of passivity. Like I said, I get accused of engaging in doom and gloom. But that's because you've gotten so habituated to helplessness. Yes, you're going to have to face severe economic hardship. But okay, frame economic turmoil not as the end, but as the end of a broken system, the delegitimization of a broken system. A way to trigger, inshallah, a cultural shift from consumption to meaning, from job-based identity to a character-based identity. You need to start trying to think of yourself, your community, as a small, non-aligned state that's navigating regional instability. Think like that, behave like that, plan like that, because that is essentially what your communities are, what they're going to be. You need to engage in a kind of micro-diplomacy locally with foreign diaspora communities, with immigrant communities who maintain ties to non-U.S. trade networks, especially BRICS-aligned countries. And maybe you can get access to alternative supply chains, informal commerce for your communities and neighborhoods, because you need to build self-sufficiency. The aim here is not to try to survive the collapse in a state of desperation and regress into self-isolation. You need to build resilience. You need to build systems that are ethical, that are collective, that are non-corporate, and that are ultimately liberatory. Moving forward, it's going to be very important for you to remember that collapse is not catastrophe. It's clarification. The deeply flawed and, in fact, corrupt architecture of the Western system has been exposed. And without that exposure, no one would have been forced to ever recognize how profoundly you need to change. Americans looking at empty shelves at the grocery store is going to be like man looking at the abyss. As long as those shelves are full, then you'll never see how empty your so-called civilization is and how empty it has made you. No, you need a whole cultural, psychological, and civilizational realignment. That's why I said no Western theories are going to be able to provide a remedy for you. Your so-called leftists, they'll say that wealth redistribution will solve all the problems. But that doesn't alter the fundamental structure that led to the disparities in the first place. Nah, the leftists, the Marxists, and so on, they're just as much about money and materialism as the capitalists are. Redistribution without structural correction is just a management strategy for continuing the injustice and the oppression. For the West, the only framework that you have is either private property or communal ownership. Capitalism, communism. Either private property or state ownership. Private property, yes or no. That same old binary thinking, You don't have a concept that understands our relationship to wealth, our relationship to property, as one of stewardship and custodianship, or as a conduit. It's about circulation, not accumulation. Wealth isn't something to brag about. It's something that you will be asked about, what you did with it and what you did to get it. But you can't get past the having it part, You need to get past that. But the whole system that you have has put you in such a desperate situation that you can't get past that. And see, they've got you feeling obliged to these systems that don't fulfill any obligations to you. They have you feeling obliged to it, so that you think that if you abandon those systems, you abandon those theories, you abandon those labels like democracy, capitalism, so on, you think it's some kind of betrayal or some sort of a rebellion. Because again, you have that combative mindset, the with us or against us mentality, even though the us in that frame is actually against you too. No, realignment is not rebellion, it's recovery. It's a recovery from all of the damage that your so-called civilization has done to you and all the damage that is done to everyone else in the world. I mean, I know the transformation is going to be hard. You're literally going to have to start from zero. But it has been so wrong for so long that just getting back to zero is actually progress. Because what I'm talking about, the type of changes that I'm talking about, the type of changes that you need to make, what I'm talking about is for you to actually return to the way that healthy societies always used to function before those Western predatory, parasitic, materialistic pathologies took over and drained all meaning from your life. That's why I say realignment, because you're disaligned now. You're dislocated, you're disjointed, you're dysfunctional, and you're broken. And you need to get back into alignment with what it means to be a human being.